Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to do a deep dive into some entrepreneurial strategies, the kind of strategies that really come in handy when you're maybe a little bit resource challenged.
Right.
Budget's tight, team's small, but the dream is huge.
That's the story for so many entrepreneurs, isn't it? Trying to make the most of what you've got and finding clever ways to compete with those bigger players.
Exactly. And speaking of punching above your weight class,
Yeah.
we've got an awesome case study that we're going to unpack today. It's about a company called Deepseek, and they managed to outmaneuver OpenAI in the AI world with a fraction of the resources.
Talk about a classic David and Goliath story. What's interesting is that Deepseek didn't have some secret weapon or a stroke of luck. It was a very deliberate strategy, and that's what we're going to break down today.
All right, so let's set the scene here. We're talking about Deepseek, a startup, $6 million in funding,
Okay.
and they're going head-to-head with OpenAI, $100 million. I mean, that's a bit of a difference, wouldn't you say?
That's a pretty significant difference, yeah. But Deepseek, they knew they couldn't win by playing the same game as OpenAI. They had to be smarter, more agile, and really, really focused.
So what did they do? How did they pull this off?
They really honed in on three key strategies: laser-sharp niche targeting, a super lean operation, and a deep commitment to what we call customer-centric innovation. And this is where it gets really interesting, because these are strategies that anyone can apply regardless of their budget.
Okay, I'm already hooked. Let's break these down one by one, starting with that niche targeting.
Hmm.
What did that actually look like in the context of DeepSeek?
So instead of trying to build this massive, all-encompassing AI platform like OpenAI, they went deep instead of wide. They focused on developing highly specialized language models for very specific industries that had unique needs.
Okay.
So, for example, they built models specifically for the legal field. These models were really good at analyzing contracts and predicting case outcomes. And they built other models for the healthcare industry, assisting doctors with diagnoses.
So while OpenAI was trying to be the everything for everyone AI, DeepSeek was like, nope, we're going to be the absolute best at these specific things.
Exactly. And because they were so focused, they were able to develop this incredible level of expertise and efficiency that a company like OpenAI, with their broader approach, simply couldn't match.
So focus equals power. Got it.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about their lean operational model. What did that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Think of it as the ultimate startup hustle. DeepSeek kept their team incredibly small, less than 20 people, but these were top-notch people. They had this flat organizational structure, which meant fewer layers of bureaucracy,
I see.
faster decision-making.
Okay, so it's like a nimble SWAT team. They
Yeah.
can move quickly and adapt to changes really fast.
Precisely. And because they were so lean, they could make their limited funding stretch much further. They didn't waste money on things like fancy offices or other unnecessary expenses. They were all about maximum impact with minimal resources.
I'm sensing a theme here. Focus, efficiency, agility. It's all connected. Now, tell me more about this customer-centric innovation. That sounds pretty important.
I would say this was their secret weapon. DeepSeek didn't just build products in isolation and hope people would like them. They deeply involved their customers in that development process right from the get-go.
So they were like, hey, customer, what problems are you facing? Let's build something together that actually solves them.
Exactly. They co-created solutions with their clients. That way they were ensuring that they were tackling real-world problems, delivering real value.
And I bet that close collaboration created a level of loyalty and trust that OpenAI, with their more arm's-length approach, couldn't quite replicate.
Absolutely. DeepSeek's customers felt like they were part of the journey, not just passive consumers, and that made a huge difference.
So it's all starting to click now, but I want to make sure our listeners can actually apply these lessons. What are those concrete steps, for the entrepreneurs out there grinding away?
Yeah, that's what we'll dig into next. We're going to unpack what we can learn from DeepSeek and turn those insights into practical tactics that anyone can use, whether you're bootstrapping a startup or leading a small team within a bigger organization.
Okay, I'm ready for more. So we just heard how DeepSeek went up against a major player in the AI world and came out on top. But how can we, the listeners, actually use those strategies? I mean, I'm sure we'd all love to replicate that success.
Well, the good news is their playbook isn't some secret formula. It's all about basic principles, really. Principles that can apply to any business.
Okay, good to know. So let's break it down. First up, niche focus. Why is that so important, especially when you don't have a lot of resources to work with? It almost seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? Like, shouldn't you be trying to reach as many people as possible?
It's a common thought, but when you're starting out, trying to be everything to everyone can really backfire. You spread yourself too thin, your message gets lost, and you end up competing with the big guys on their terms, which is tough.
So it's about choosing your battles carefully and focusing your energy where you can make the most impact.
Right. DeepSeek knew they couldn't compete with OpenAI's brand recognition and resources in the general AI market, but they could absolutely dominate in very specific niches.
Makes sense. But finding that perfect niche can't be easy. What advice would you give to our listeners who are trying to figure out where they fit in?
This is where solid market research is essential. You've got to identify those gaps in the existing solutions. You've got to understand what those specific customer segments really need. And then you can laser focus on solving their problems better than anyone else.
So don't just try to copy what's already out there. Find those hidden opportunity, the problems that others are ignoring.
Exactly. And DeepSeek was fantastic at this. They used market analysis tools, customer interviews, competitor research, really digging deep to find those high-value niches where they could really stand out.
Okay, so we've got our niche figured out. Now, how do we actually operate efficiently, especially when money's tight? Remember, DeepSeek managed to accomplish so much with a very small team.
This is where embracing that lean business model comes in. It's not about cutting corners, it's about being smart and resourceful.
Okay, so what does that look like in reality?
Well, for DeepSeek, they kept their team very small, right? Like we said, less than 20 people. But each person was top talent. They had that flat organizational structure, fewer layers of bureaucracy. And they prioritized building a minimum viable product, an MVP, to test their ideas quickly and get that early feedback.
So lots of action, less planning.
That's it. And they were really focused on having a small team of superstars, people who were passionate and could wear multiple hats.
It reminds me of that saying, do more with less.
That's exactly the idea behind a lean startup. It's empowering. You can achieve so much, even with a tiny budget.
Love it. So resourcefulness is key. Now let's move on to strategic partnerships. I feel like this is an area where a lot of entrepreneurs struggle. They're so busy building their own thing, they forget to look around and see who they could be collaborating with.
You're absolutely right. It's a common trap.
Yeah.
But the right partnership, especially when you're tight on resources, can be a total game changer. It's all about maximizing each other's strengths and expanding your reach without needing to spend a fortune.
Okay, so who should we be looking to partner with, and what kind of collaborations make the most sense?
The possibilities are endless. Take DeepSeek. They partnered with some universities, right, to tap into the latest research and fresh talent, and they work directly with their clients to develop those tailored solutions together.
So you're saying it doesn't have to be about those big-name sponsorships. It's about finding the right fit, the partners who can actually make a difference.
Exactly. It's about asking yourself, who can help me fill in my gaps, reach a new audience, or even get access to resources that would normally be too expensive or time-consuming to build on my own?
Makes sense. Partnerships? Checked. Now, what about customer feedback? I think we can all agree it's a goldmine for any business. And DeepSeek really seemed to understand that.
Oh, absolutely. They saw their customers as more than just buyers. They were collaborators, co-creators even. And DeepSeek actively sought out their feedback through the entire development process. They used that feedback to constantly refine what they were building, ensuring it resonated with their target audience.
It's about really listening to your customers, not just talking at them.
That's it. DeepSeek didn't just guess what their customers wanted, they asked them directly. Surveys, user testing, even inviting select customers to be part of the development process.
So it was a constant cycle of learning and evolving, all driven by real-world feedback.
Right. And that's how they made products that weren't just technically sound, but also truly customer-focused. They knew that happy customers were their best advocates, especially for a new company. And word of mouth is priceless, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered niche focus, lean operations, strategic partnerships, and customer feedback. What about that fifth and final strategy, the one that DeepSeek really nailed?
It all comes down to marketing, but not your typical big budget marketing blitz. This is what we call agile marketing. DeepSeek was a master at it.
Agile marketing. Intrigued. Tell me more. What does that look like in action?
It's like we talked about with being lean. It's all about being nimble, using data to guide your decisions, and always experimenting to see what works best, constantly adapting.
So less about flashy campaigns, more about those targeted high-impact tactics.
Exactly. DeepSeek used content marketing to build thought leadership in their niches. They leveraged social media to connect with their audience. They even optimized their website for search engines to attract more visitors organically. It was all about getting the most bang for their buck.
And I bet they did a great job of highlighting what made them different, their unique selling propositions.
They knew they couldn't outspend OpenAI on advertising. They had to be more strategic. They focused on telling a compelling story. A story about their specialized expertise, their commitment to their customers, and their ability to deliver custom-made solutions.
So it's about finding those levers, those key differentiators that resonate with your audience.
Right. And what's interesting is that Deepseek really understood how their underdog status could actually be an advantage.
Oh, how so?
Well, they embraced it. They
Yeah.
connected with customers who were tired of dealing with big impersonal corporations, customers looking for a more personalized, collaborative experience.
Ah, that's so smart. They turned a perceived weakness into a strength. Love it.
Uh,
We've covered a lot of ground here, but I want to go back to something you said earlier.
Hmm.
The idea that limited resources can actually be an advantage. I think a lot of our listeners might find that hard to believe.
Yeah, it might seem counterintuitive, but hear me out. When you're limited in resources, you have to get creative. You have to be super efficient. And you have to be much more adaptable to survive. There's no room for wasting time or money on things that don't matter.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Exactly. And smaller companies, they often have this built-in advantage when it comes to agility and speed. They can shift direction quickly, respond to changes in the market way faster, and they can make decisions without having to go through endless layers of approval.
It's like they're that nimble speedboat again. Well, the bigger companies are these huge, slow-moving cargo ships.
Perfect analogy. And that nimbleness is a huge asset in today's business world. Things change so fast.
So the takeaway here is being the underdog isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's how you play the game that matters.
Right.
You can use what you've got to your advantage
Right.
and build a successful business, even when you're up against those seemingly impossible odds.
Deepseek is a perfect example of that. With a fraction of the budget, they outmaneuvered OpenAI. They focused on their strengths. They were incredibly resourceful, and they stayed laser focused on their customers.
Their story is incredibly inspiring. I hope our listeners feel that same sense of possibility, that no matter what your resources are, you can achieve amazing things.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears a bit and dive into a concept I think our listeners will find really interesting. We'll call it the underdog advantage.
Okay, so let's dig into this underdog advantage. It's an interesting concept, especially after hearing about Deepseek's incredible journey.
You know, it's really about recognizing that even when you're starting smaller, maybe with less, you often have some built-in advantages that those big companies might overlook.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are those advantages? And how can we use them to our benefit?
Well, we've talked about a few already. Agility, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Smaller companies, they can adapt to changes so much quicker than those larger, more bureaucratic organizations.
Right, like we were saying before, it's that speedboat versus the cargo ship.
Exactly. And because they're often closer to their customers, smaller companies can be more responsive to their needs. Building those strong relationships, that personal touch, that's a powerful way to stand out.
Makes me think of David and Goliath. David, he didn't win because he was bigger or stronger. It was his agility, his strategy, and really understanding his opponent.
Exactly. And that applies to the business world, too. Underdogs, they often have a clearer view of what's going on. They aren't weighed down by old systems, internal politics, or just the slowness that often comes with size.
So they can move faster, experiment more freely, take risks that bigger companies wouldn't even think about.
That's it. And that freedom to innovate, to disrupt, that's a game changer. Remember, so many of the most successful companies today, they started as small underdogs. They challenged the way things were done, maybe with limited resources, but with a ton of passion and some really clever ideas.
It's really inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if our listeners find themselves in that underdog position, what should they do? What's the main takeaway?
Embrace it. Don't look at those limited resources as a disadvantage. See it as a chance to get creative, be resourceful, and put your customers first. Focus on what you do well, build those strategic partnerships, and remember, agility and adaptability are superpowers.
So it's about working smarter, not harder. And like Deepseek showed us, you can absolutely take on those giants and win, even when it seems impossible.
Absolutely. Deepseek's story proves that strategic thinking, disciplined execution, and putting your customers first, that's how you win.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I have one final question for our listeners. What's your underdog advantage? What strengths do you have that can make a real impact, even if you don't have all the resources in the world? Take some time to really think about that, explore those strengths, and let them fuel your journey. Thanks for joining us.